Hello, this is Module 6, Unit 3, Activity 1. Today I just kind of want to talk about the process and purpose of reading. So the most important thing here, I think, is the purpose, I believe, of reading is to understand. It's an absolute necessity in this day and age. You have to read to understand pretty much everything around us as adults, and to be able to go out into the world, students are going to have an ability to read and understand exactly what's going on around them. Reading begins, so the process begins as soon as we start to recognize the sounds associated with either a letter or some sort of character for other languages other than a language with an alphabet. I teach students who their first language is Chinese, so they do have a different system of understanding in terms of Chinese. There is no set alphabet. There are many, many characters, so they have to recognize many different sounds. The role that morphological analysis and contextual analysis play in reading are very important. So I'm going to first start with morphological analysis. Morphological analysis is the ability a student has to use root words or prefixes and suffixes to understand what a certain word might be. So if a student can understand what a root word is, and then you add or subtract different prefixes or suffixes, they can have a very large vocabulary without having to memorize a whole bunch more. Just knowing what a set list of prefixes, such as like a, un, im, dis, miss, things like that, what those are, and knowing some suffixes, full, less, and things like that, is going to give them a higher range of vocabulary knowledge than if they just didn't know those root words and the prefixes that can be attached to those root words. Contextual analysis, on the other hand, is the ability to understand what certain words are or take a guess at what they mean based on how they're used in context. So closely examining a text to understand what does this challenging word that I don't quite understand mean, well, you got to kind of understand, all right, so this story is about this. I'm going to guess that this word is probably closely related to this. Or here's the mood or the tone of a story. Here is a character that is feeling this certain type of way. How can I use that context to understand maybe what some of these words I don't understand mean? The other thing that we can look at here is when trying to develop this language understanding or the ability to read, there are different practices, so evidence-based practices, that can give a stronger phonemic awareness so that students who are learning English are able to pronounce and read these words. So some of the different skills would be things like isolating sounds, blending phonemes, substituting, deleting, segmenting, and adding. So something like isolating, you could say, what is the first sound in this word? The student then gives you the first sound in that word. That lets you know that they do understand what is the sound that is attached to this specific letter. You can put two words or two letters together. So normally things like an S and a C together will make an S sound, such as scent. Other words where there's blending of T and R, F and R, letters, consonants with L, things like that. You kind of build these practices up. You practice this a lot with the students. That's going to give them a stronger understanding, a stronger reading ability. So on Padlet, which we had created as a class, Christine put something called the Home Language, an English language learner's most valuable resource. And this talked about all sorts of important things, how we can make connections between the home language and the language that they're learning, English, at the time. So if they understand how it's the same and how it's different, they're going to be able to understand sentence structure and the different sounds that maybe can be attached. The other thing that they can do is they can use their home language to understand things in a new language. So for me, I teach a fourth grade science class, and in this class, students have to be able to differentiate between two different types of plants. Now, these two plants are angiosperms and gymnosperms. In the Chinese language, yo means to have, and I use this to my advantage. So I always say angiosperms. These are plants that have flowers. So the difference here is flowering plants and non-flowering plants. Well, yo meaning to have, angiosperm, what does it have? Well, then the student would know it has flowers. Gymnosperm does not have flowers. So I use their understanding of a word in their home language to deepen their understanding of some of these difficult science words that they sometimes learn. Now, that's just one example, and many times I might use their home language as well to make a connection, because if they have a connection between their home language and the language they're learning, it's much easier for them to remember and look back on. The next thing here that we should go into is how we can achieve effective comprehension in a well-developed language to acquire higher level thinking processes. So as literacy teachers and reading teachers, we aim to teach reading to learn. As they grow and they gain knowledge in a subject matter, they can comprehend different ideas. So as their comprehension reaches a certain point, then they can apply their knowledge to analyze the material and make their own ideas about this topic. With any high level of thinking, students must always go back and check their work. They must evaluate what they've done. So this kind of cyclic process of learning, applying, gaining knowledge, and then going back and evaluating what they've learned is going to really help solidify that knowledge and gear them towards the next step in having stronger literacy skills. It's going to continue to create a positive feedback loop. So evidence-based practices for teaching English learners, especially those with learning difficulties or reading difficulties, can be a bit tough. The best thing that you could use is scaffolding. So using their home language, using visual labels, so visual flashcards, things like that. Word banks, so they have an idea from where to use their words, and just repetition. So constantly reading. Now, there's a little girl that I taught, and I taught her for about 2 or 3 years, and what I noticed is she had this really strong ability to speak and to listen. She could always understand what I was saying, and she also had the ability to repeat things back and talk about what we're thinking about or the things that we're doing. However, when it came to reading, she would always have trouble, and she would guess. She would just look at the first letter and she would guess. Well, after a while of trying to get her to read a lot, I noticed that sometimes she would say the ending sounds, or she would say the word sounds, but she would do the different phonemes in different places. After consulting with a friend and another teacher and just some other people in general, a few different people, we kind of came to the conclusion she's probably dyslexic, because her ability to speak and her ability to listen are perfect. She can always repeat things back to us. She's improving at a really fast rate for these two aspects of English. However, when it comes to reading, she always seems to be misplacing the words, and so she starts to get frustrated and she guesses. Well, the things that we began to do is we would use something to block the word so that each letter is the only letter visible at a time. So she could only see one at a time, and she would make the sounds. And when she got to a certain point, she would be able to say, oh, I know this sound, this sound, this sound, and I know through contextual analysis that they're probably going to be saying this. And a lot of times she would be right. She got really excited, and she started to improve a lot. We also would use things like transparent but colored, so I guess it would be translucent plastic sheets to put on her reading, so that it would give her a different kind of lens to see through. After a while, she improved so much. I was so excited, and it was exciting. It was exciting for her. It made it more fun, and that's kind of brings me to what I think is the most important aspect of literacy and reading, and it's we have all these processes and we have all these evidence-based practices, but the most important thing at the end of the day, I think, is getting students to want to read. if we find ways to get them to want to do this, that is 90% of the battle. If they don't want to do something, they're not going to do it, and they're not going to do it well. If they want to read, if they want to go out and look for words, if they're asking for help because they want to do something, they're going to most likely be able to do it. Without the desire to learn, I really think the students and the teachers are going to suffer the same fate as Sisyphus in the ancient Greek stories. They're going to roll the ball up the hill for it to just roll back down again, and they're going to have to keep pushing the stone up the hill every day, because it's a constant uphill battle when somebody doesn't want to learn something. So putting all these things together, and then also trying to find ways to make it enticing and attractive for the student, these are how we can really improve our literacy rates and improve the process of reading. And with an improved process, the students are going to understand the purpose, because they're going to be able to do a lot more than they were before they could do all this before they could understand everything that they were reading. So I hope this was a bit informative, and I feel that I've been learning quite a bit. So thank you.